The aftermath didn't arrive with fireworks or triumph. It arrived with an awkward silence. The kind that lingers when everyone in the room knows what they just witnessed wasn't quite right. The fight had ended, the spectacle had played out, and yet the overwhelming reaction wasn't awe or excitement. It was confusion, disbelief, and for some, outright frustration. As the dust settled on the chaos surrounding Jake Paul and the looming presence of Anthony Joshua, the conversation shifted away from fantasy matchups and viral hype and landed squarely on an uncomfortable truth. What people had just watched wasn't good. Not good technically, not good stylistically, and not good for the sport that keeps getting dragged into these moments whether it likes it or not. That's where the criticism began. Not from a place of personal hatred or some deep-rooted vendetta, but from something far simpler. Fatigue. Fatigue from the circus. Fatigue from the noise. Fatigue from seeing boxing twisted into a parody of itself under the bright lights of internet fame. The reaction wasn't rage-filled or obsessive. It was almost dismissive in tone, as if to say, this isn't something worth losing sleep over. Jake Paul loses no sleep over his critics, and his critics, at least the honest ones, don't lose sleep over him either. But when a global platform keeps pushing nonsense into the mainstream and calling it progress, someone is going to speak up, not because they care about the individual, but because they care about the craft. Jake Paul isn't being criticized because he exists. He's being criticized because he keeps positioning himself in a space that demands respect while delivering something that doesn't earn it. The fights continue to be formless, theatrical, and carefully curated to protect the brand rather than test the fighter. And yet, because he's a massive star, because his name generates clicks, headlines, and traffic, the conversation keeps circling back to him. The sport can't look away, even when it desperately wants to. That's the paradox. He's not the best boxer. He's not even close. But he's one of the biggest stories in boxing, and that alone forces serious fighters and analysts to respond. Even Amir Khan, someone who understands the balance between showmanship and legitimacy better than most, couldn't fully detach himself from the spectacle. Sitting there, talking about how Jake Paul should be fighting real fighters. Real competition, Khan admitted something that echoed across the boxing community. He couldn't help himself. He got drawn in because it was a show, and that admission is telling. Even the professionals, even the veterans who know better, find themselves watching despite their better judgment. The spectacle works, even when it shouldn't. But then came Darren Till, and his reaction cut through the noise like a slap across the face. Darren Till didn't just criticize what he saw, he rejected it entirely. He walked out. For someone who considers himself among the best striking martial artists in the world, sitting there watching what unfolded felt like a betrayal of everything he had trained for. Everything he believed in. To hear two men with questionable credentials calling him out, while delivering that level of performance in the ring, was more than insulting. It was disorienting. In his own words, it felt like he was unlearning the sport just by watching. That's not exaggeration for effect. That's a professional fighter explaining what it feels like to watch a discipline he's dedicated his life to being diluted in real time. That moment matters, because Darren Till isn't some bitter outsider throwing stones from the sidelines. He's someone who has stepped into real fights, against real killers, under real pressure. He knows what elite striking looks like. He knows what discipline, timing, and technique are supposed to resemble when everything is on the line. So when he says he had to leave because it disrespected the sport, that reaction carries weight. It speaks to a broader frustration simmering beneath the surface, one that many fighters feel but don't always voice so bluntly. What makes the situation even more surreal is that this isn't happening in isolation. Darren Till himself has flirted with the influencer boxing scene. There was talk at one point about him potentially fighting figures like Andrew Tate or Chase Damore, names that live in the same internet-driven ecosystem as Jake Paul. He's boxed under the Misfits banner. He understands the appeal, but there's a line, and in his mind, that line is crystal clear. Whatever entertainment value these events claim to offer, they should never blur the difference between someone who has dedicated their life to combat sports and someone who's treating it like a content lane. The idea of Darren Till sharing a ring with those names isn't just mismatched. It's dangerous. Not because of ego or trash talk, but because of the sheer disparity in skill and experience. Even on a casual night out, even after a few beers in Dubai with the lads, Darren Till would have smoked them. That's not bravado. That's reality. He would have knocked them out cold, flatlined them, and it wouldn't have been competitive. And that's precisely the problem. When these matchups are even suggested, when they're entertained as viable spectacles, it exposes how far removed the conversation has become from sporting integrity. There was a moment, fleeting but unsettling, when an AI-generated image circulated showing Jake Paul stepping into the ring with Anthony Joshua. It wasn't real, but it didn't feel entirely impossible either. That's the most alarming part. The idea that such a mismatch could even be imagined speaks volumes about where the sport finds itself. Because if Jake Paul ever did step into the ring with someone like Anthony Joshua, the consequences wouldn't be comedic. They would be catastrophic. That's not entertainment. That's someone getting seriously hurt. And yet, the machine keeps rolling. The algorithms don't care about technique or safety. They care about engagement. They care about numbers. Jake Paul has around 21 million followers, a digital empire that dwarfs most legitimate fighters. Against that backdrop, 725,000 subscribers might not sound like much to some, but to those building something real, something honest, it means everything. It represents a community that values substance over spectacle, analysis over hype. It's proof that there's still an audience hungry for real conversation about combat sports, even in an era dominated by viral clips and manufactured drama. The frustration expressed in the aftermath isn't about jealousy or relevance. It's about standards. Boxing and combat sports as a whole have always had room for showmanship. Ali understood it. Tyson mastered it. Even modern fighters know the importance of selling a fight. But none of that works if the foundation isn't solid. Without skill, without genuine competition, the show collapses into farce. And that's where many believe Jake Paul currently sits, propped up by marketing rather than mastery. There's also a quiet sadness beneath the anger, because every time one of these events goes viral, it pushes real fighters further into the shadows. Men and women who grind in obscurity, who fight on undercards, who bleed and break for a fraction of the attention. They watch as someone with far less experience commands headlines simply because he understands the internet better. That imbalance doesn't just frustrate fans. It demoralizes fighters who feel the latter being pulled away from them. Still, the conversation continues because it has to. Ignoring the phenomenon doesn't make it disappear. Criticizing it doesn't mean obsessing over it. It means drawing a line in the sand and saying this is what combat sports should be, and this is what they should never become. The voices speaking out aren't trying to cancel Jake Paul or erase him from the sport. They're trying to remind everyone that there are consequences when entertainment masquerades as legitimacy. As the week moves on and the next headline inevitably arrives, the aftermath of this moment will linger, not because of what happened in the ring, but because of what it revealed outside of it. A sport at a crossroads, a fan base divided between spectacle and substance. Fighters like Darren Till walking out in protest, not because they're bitter, but because they refuse to normalize something that undermines everything they've worked for. And that brings the conversation back to you, the audience. What did you think of everything that unfolded? Do you believe influencer boxing is harmless entertainment, or do you think it's eroding the foundations of combat sports? Should figures like Jake Paul be pushed toward real competition, or should the line between show and sport be more clearly defined? Let your thoughts be known in the comments. If you appreciate in-depth, honest breakdowns like this, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. The discussion doesn't end here, and your voice is part of it.